Welcome to episode 3 of the Fall Challenge podcast. Today we're going to talk about optimism and gratitude. But as always, we're going to start today off with sharing just some good things that happened to us over the last week. So Beth, how has your week been?
It's been great. And my one good thing was I took some time over the long weekend to read a book. And so I know I'm fortunate to be able to have that extra time and to dedicate it to actually reading a book, but I enjoyed it. So how about you?
That sounds delightful. My long weekend was awesome as well. I had the privilege of getting to watch two of some of my best friends get married in Hutchinson. So they were out at a really pretty barn venue, and I don't know, it was just really fun to be with everybody. And we have a couple friends who have transplanted and live in Portland and Omaha, so they came back, and I don't know, it was just nice to see everybody.
Yeah, a lot of nice time with friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to talk more about optimism. Optimism is a learned skill and not a trait that you have or don't have. And we're going to look more at the work of Martin Seligman. He's researched around positive psychology, and he spent a lot of time and energy around really researching what is right about people versus what is wrong. So now that we're in week 3, and we've been doing the last couple weeks asking you what is one good thing that has happened to you over the past week, have you found yourself, and this is just a question for you to think about, is have you found yourself looking for something good that's happened? Or are you experiencing things during your week and thinking about, oh, there's my one good thing this week?
So for me, when I do this exercise, I tend to notice more of the little moments throughout the day that are good moments. Beth is laughing at me because I was sharing this earlier, and I was talking about how fun it is to watch squirrels play, but it's cute and it's fun, and just recognizing kind of the beauty all around me is something I really get from this exercise.
And there's something to be said to where you find humor too.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, and I also have learned that even like small interactions of just like when someone does something nice for you, that you now like realize like, hey, that was something that good, like something good that happened to me today.
Right.
And so I think that that's one thing that I've picked up on with this habit of asking myself is what's one good thing that's happened this week. So to talk more about learned optimism is the idea that it can be cultivated. It is done by consciously challenging any negative self-talk. The opposite to optimism is pessimism, in which pessimism is more common. And so how to grow is to think about the reactions to adversity in a new way.
So I'm going to describe the 3 types of explanatory styles that Martin Seligman uses to describe the ways that we explain how things happen to us. And it's either through the lens of an optimist or a pessimist. So these are known as the 3 Ps. So the first P is permanence, and this is the way in which individuals explain to themselves how long a situation will last. Optimists believe that when something good happens, it will last forever, but when something bad happens, it's really only going to be temporary. Pessimists believe that good things are only temporary and that the bad things are going to last forever. So for an example, after a bad job interview, an optimist will look at that experience and say, hey, I'll do better next time. There'll be a better opportunity down the road. The pessimist, on the other hand, is going to think that he or she is never going to get a job ever in any situation. The second P stands for pervasiveness, and this is the explanation of how much of one's life a particular experience will impact. So an optimist believes that good things will have an impact on all aspects of their life, while bad things will only affect this one area of their life. So, for example, if an optimist is rejected from a promotion at work, they're going to think of that rejection in one localized part of their life. They're not going to think it's going to impact anything outside of their work experience. The pessimist, on the other hand, believes the opposite. So the pessimist believes that bad things will impact all aspects of their life. So being denied a promotion or a raise will mean that maybe their coworkers don't like them or their boss doesn't like them, and then they're going to be worried that their family will be disappointed that they didn't get that promotion. They're going to be concerned about their finances. It creates this snowball effect that makes one, local incident a much more aggressive problem that they have to deal with. The third and final P stands for personalization, and this is the explanation of how much influence an individual has over an event. The optimist believes that they had a role in the good events and can attribute bad events to outside forces. The pessimist, on the other hand, believes that they had an influence on bad events, but that good events were out of their control or just plain old luck. So an example of using the personalization explanatory style would be if a person gets laid off of work due to the economy not going very well, the optimist would be able to articulate that it was due to the economic forces at play, while the pessimist would feel like it was his or her fault and that the company laid them off because they weren't doing their job adequately.
So Natalie, with personalization though, isn't it known to be controversial?
Yeah, it is, because we don't want people to negate responsibility in their actions. So an optimist constantly saying, oh, it wasn't my fault that bad things happened, could get kind of dicey. We want people to have individual responsibility with what they do in their life. However, when we're thinking about personalization from this explanatory style, we want people to know that they have the ability to change. And so when you're constantly in that negative, pessimistic brain, you're thinking that you internally are bad or you internally aren't able to make your life better. So after a while, if we think like that constantly, we fall into this category of learned helplessness. And basically what Martin Seligman says is once you reach that level of learned helplessness, you stop trying in life. And that creates a lot of problems in itself and doesn't help people feel like they have autonomy in what they're doing.
Okay, so another way to just kind of summarize what Natalie was just talking about, here's an example of to relate those 3 Ps. So what happened was an unlucky situation. It's not personal, and really just a setback, which is not permanent for this one of many goals, and not pervasive. We started out today's lesson and talking about learned optimism, so we're going to give you a strategy on how to apply this. So what this is called is ABCD. I'm going to talk more about what each of those letters stand for, but this is commonly known as a cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as CBT. So CBT is a form of therapy that treats problems and boosts happiness by modifying dysfunctional emotions, behaviors, and thoughts. CBT helps you become aware of inaccurate or negative thinking so you can view challenging situations more clearly and respond to them in a more effective way. It can be a very helpful tool alone or in combination with other types of therapies. CBT is not only for someone who has a mental health condition. It can be an effective tool to help anyone learn how to better manage stressful life situations. So to get into the ABCD method here is A stands for adversity, a challenge or difficult situation. B is your beliefs about the adversity. C, consequences, the negative consequences of your beliefs. D is for disputation, arguing with the logic of your negative beliefs. And there's another option for D. So distraction is when disputation is not realistic. So to really go through this and how ABCD is applied, I like to use a situation around driving. So the situation is when we are driving to work, and we all know when we have those drivers that come up on our tail end kind of fast and like to fly around us. Ugh. Maybe, I know.
They're the worst.
Yeah. And they don't use their blinker on top of it. This difficulty is our adversity. So moving to belief, what is your belief in this scenario?
I would probably think the guy's being a jerk, for lack of a better word, and he's just trying to scare me and make me uncomfortable and, get me to move to the other lane or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And then with C for consequences, as you're driving with this scenario, how does it make you feel?
I get very reactive. I get kind of like angry and frustrated, and I can tell that my heart rate starts to go up, and I get anxious because I don't trust that other driver. What if he hits me? And I don't want to hit anyone in front of me. It just makes me scared and uncomfortable.
So what it sounds like, does it change your driving as well?
For sure, yeah. I feel like I get more defensive and nervous, and yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So disputation means arguing the logic of your negative beliefs. So what if you believe something different when the car is flying in and out of lanes or coming up behind you? Maybe in reality they're trying to get to the hospital because their family member was admitted in to have a baby, or They needed to get to their daughter's third grade performance they promised they would be at. Does this change how you feel?
Yeah, it totally does. It kind of puts my defenses down, and it makes me think of times when I've been late and that pressure, or like if I've been in a scenario like that where I feel like I need to get somewhere, and I don't know, it makes me recognize the human in that person almost. So it definitely calms me down when I think of it in that way.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes disputation, it doesn't always work that way, where we can put like another storyline of like why the person is going as fast as they are, or they're going in and out of lanes. Like maybe we can't create a storyline to make ourselves feel better.
Sure.
Another thing that happens when we have these scenarios going on is we tend to ruminate over them. As I'm driving, you might sit there for 5-10 minutes still thinking about that one car, or maybe even worse, you get to work and you still are like bothered by that car.
Right.
And so an example of distraction, so that last D, to think about something different, is really thinking about something altogether differently, like trying to take your mind off of that situation that you were just in with the car and with the other driver.
For me, sometimes I don't want to give that driver, if I can't think of another reason why they're doing that, I don't want to give them the satisfaction of ruining the next half hour of my day. So I intentionally try to move forward and not give them that power, because I have control over how I feel, even though it doesn't feel like that way all the time.
Yeah. And so this is just an example with driving, and really this ABCD method. So adversity, your beliefs, the consequences, and then applying disputation or distraction is really a strategy that you can use in any kind of difficult situation, or if you find yourself that you're ruminating over something and that you're just continuously replaying something bad that happened or something that's making you upset, you really can apply this ABCD to any of those scenarios.
Nice. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about gratitude. And gratitude is one of the positive emotions that we talked about in last week's podcast that Barbara Fredrickson studied. And gratitude deserves a little bit more spotlight because there is just so much research around it and the benefits that it provides, both from a physical, psychological, and social benefits.
Okay, so thinking about gratitude and what we're grateful for, I have a question for you, Natalie.
What's up?
So tell me a gift that you received that you're grateful for.
Ooh. Well, mine's not actually like a physical gift that I've received, but last year in November, my apartment flooded, and it was not one of my favorite experiences, and it was very stressful, and I just remember that time in my life and being so grateful for my friends and family, primarily my friends because my family lived kind of far away, and how much they stepped up and helped me with the mess that was, gave me a place to stay for a couple days, helped me clean up, all of my damaged material, helped me with, I don't know, just everything. It was, and just from the emotional support side of things, that was a really hard time. And even my lovely coworkers were there helping out with, different things at work when I couldn't be at work. So just knowing that people had my back and how grateful I was for that.
Yeah.
What about you?
Mine's also something that's not a physical or materialistic type gift. And just thinking about like my grandparents, and it's more sentimental, but more of a trait that was handed down and something I learned from them. Their just ability to cook. And
nice.
Yeah. And I remember we lived really close to my grandparents, so I would go there every single day after school. And they cooked really healthy, so I learned about like having your protein and your vegetable, and it was always perfectly laid out. And
Nice.
I kind of do the same thing, and anytime like I cook for my family, they always will say like, this reminds me of my dad's parents and how they cooked. And so I know that I got the gift of like the desire to cook and to eat healthy from my grandparents.
That's really cool. So there are some key ways to practice gratitude that kind of optimizes the benefits of it. So when we're thinking about being grateful, we want to think about the big things in our life. So the examples that Beth and I just shared were really big things that help support us in our lives. So our family, our friends, and how they've been there for us. And then it's also really good to think about the little things in your life that you experience day in and day out. So hearing your favorite song on the radio, or having a really good meal, getting to see flowers pop up, just recognizing the little things in life that are important to you.
For sure.
And Robert Emmons, who studies gratitude, actually breaks down the process of how we experience gratitude. So there's 3 parts. We need to recognize intellectually that there is something or someone we're grateful for. And then we willingly acknowledge that person or that thing in our life. And then emotionally, we appreciate them. So it's a 3-step process in experiencing gratitude.
So if I understand this correctly, like thinking of like my bigger thing, like the bigger thing I was grateful for, like emotionally appreciating someone would that be applying like the positive emotions that I think of, like of my grandma and my grandpa, of getting that, like being grateful for them?
Yeah. Yep. You go through that whole step of thinking about them, remembering how grateful you are in that moment, and thinking about those positive emotions that they elicit, and then making that step of truly acknowledging.
So there are barriers to practicing gratitude. We've linked this in this week's email, so you'll see that there. So you can go ahead and review this, but we're just going to talk about it quickly about our barriers that we've experienced. So Natalie, do you want to share one of the barriers that you've experienced from this list?
Yeah, so there's a pretty big list. The one I think that I resonate most with is comparison thinking. And that's when we compare ourselves to others who are doing quote unquote better than we are, and we feel frustrated or less grateful and kind of question why we aren't there. And sometimes when you're in that frame of mind, when you're kind of constantly striving for bigger and better, which I know I tend to do, I'm a pretty big goal setter and I can kind of overdo it sometimes, I forget to look at my life and where I'm at and how much I do have to be grateful for. Mm-hmm. So I think that's my biggest trap in the list of the barriers.
Yeah, and mine I would say is inability to acknowledge dependency. It took up until like a couple years ago. I had a hard time like connecting gratefulness and being like dependent on other people. I strove like for many years to be fully independent, that it was a hard connection for me to like be dependent on people and feel grateful for that. So on the back side of the barriers, there are 10 top tips for practicing gratitude. So go ahead and take a look at each of those, and there's just ideas that you can try. And again, the biggest takeaway from this would be whatever works for you is the best way to practice gratitude. And so it's really, each of us are going to practice differently, and that's okay. We're going to wrap up this week's episode. This week's homework is actually writing a gratitude letter. So you're going to pick someone in your life for whom you are grateful for, but you haven't really ever thanked them, but you still can. So second, you're going to write a letter thanking them and then actually deliver the letter to them in person. If in person is not an option, then I would say the next best thing would be to read it over the phone. If that's not an option, then sending the letter in the mail. And then the final option would be sending it via email to them.
Yeah, no texting. That doesn't work. I did this gratitude letter with my grandparents this past Christmas, and it was so much fun. It was emotional. I'm not gonna lie. Like reading it out loud to them was pretty intense, but it was a really cool experience, and I know that they were really happy and proud and grateful. So all in all, there's no bad that can come of this. It's a really cool experience.
And I'll be honest that I've done this, but I haven't gotten myself the courage to actually read it to them. So if you don't feel comfortable, know that we're all in different places and that sending it in the mail is okay too. And
absolutely.
That's what I did.
All right. Have a good week, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.